podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. My name is Adam Franklin, and today on the show we have Matthew Kimberley. Before I introduce you to him, I want you to know that this is the show for people who love marketing on the web. I'm going to take you behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments, and we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll confess what fails and also reveal the truth about what really works. So the show is brought to you by the book that Toby and I wrote, which is also called Web Marketing That Works. Now I've got a gift for you for tuning in, and that is the bundle of 33 free marketing templates. If you'd like to get your hands on those, if you haven't already, head to bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Okay, so the guest today is Matthew Kimberley. He is the author of the self-help classic called How to Get a Grip. It is absolutely laugh out loud funny and incredibly useful. But that was almost from a previous chapter in his life. He is now known as an awesome sales trainer, public speaker, and creator of the course Professional Persuasion. I've known of Matthew's work for a number of years now, so it's a huge pleasure to have him on the show as we discuss everything from sales to persuasion to speaking and a whole lot more. So with that introduction, let's head over to the interview. My name is Adam Franklin. Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast, Matthew Kimberley.
Nice to be here, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. So we've got a bunch of things that I'd like to cover off today, but let's start with the whole concept of sales/persuasion online. Because I know it scares the pants off a lot of people, and a lot of people go from being a nice, friendly, sociable human being to being some sort of capital letter, yellow highlighter type screaming person and just completely inauthentic when it comes to selling online. What's working these days in terms of selling stuff online?
Exactly what you just said just now is not working, Adam. The yellow highlighter, the screaming capitals, the screenshotted examples of PayPal accounts that demonstrate proof, the piles of cash, the red Lamborghini, the private jet, that stuff will always work, right? So it will always work. You can always hype anything up, and marketers have known that for years and years. But I think as the market evolves, and the internet used to be a little bit of a Wild West area, and across all industries, not just marketers selling to marketers, but health and fitness and financial investments and household goods and everything else. The consumer is getting a lot more savvy now. And although there will be some grandparents who still believe that, the Nigerian prince has got 400K sitting in a bank account waiting for them, the vast majority of consumers are less likely to be downloading viruses, falling for the one weird trick that doctors have wanted to ban for years to prevent you from trimming your body fat down to 4% by eating more. There are more savvy consumers. The market is frankly becoming more sophisticated. And I think the lack of hyperbole and the lack of hype and the abundance of genuine social proof, because don't forget, everything is Googleable now. Everything is Googleable, is the way forward. And I think it takes, I think we need to earn our right online now rather than rely upon any marketing message that we might be able to put up in 6 bullet points.
Okay, so what's your take then on, I guess, what I've seen as a sort of transformation from people doing a big long sales page or a big long advert where they're hoping to close the sale in one hit versus what I'm seeing more of these days, which seems to be a slow and steady type of courting process before they go for the sale.
I don't know if either of those are new, Adam. The long form direct sales copy written letter is as old as marketing.
That's what I mean. That's the old one. There used to be a lot of add to straight to high pressure sales page.
Sure, absolutely. And I still believe that long-form direct response copy works very, very well. And I'm a huge fan of long-form direct response copy. However, I believe that even the copywriting masters who used to write these things and mail them out to sell family crests and things like that using catalog mailings would agree that they would have a distinct advantage if they'd had the opportunity to warm up their audience first. Now, they were playing a numbers game which was directly correlated to the amount of money that they spent versus the money they got back in one mailing. And very often, if you read the stories, the horror stories, the folk tales about these guys, they say, I begged, borrowed, and stole my last $5,000 from my parents and close associates, and it was sink or swim, do or die. If these $5,000 didn't make a return, then I was bankrupt and out on my ass. And so they would need to see a return off that single mailing. Now, we have access to data. We have opportunities to get in front of people which are completely different in terms of cost efficiency now. It's very, very easy. Would I send somebody directly to a sales page? Absolutely, if I was retargeting, right? If they were already familiar with me. And this is what we're seeing now. There's no doubt that people buy from those. People will be more inclined to buy from you if they've heard of you before. People will be more inclined to buy from you if they've had some kind of connection with you before. People will be more inclined to buy from you if they regularly receive your emails. And I think that simple fact has moved the marketing community, the direct sales community, to understanding that A, the value of a lead is far more useful in the long term. So why send somebody to a direct response sales page when you can send them to a lead capture page? And secondly, let's put our money in a smart place where we're spending it on people who've already kind of know us a little bit and then ask them to buy stuff.
Okay, so does it change, I guess, whether it's a low ticket type of product or a high-end product? Is the process the same or does it differ?
Yeah, if you told me, Adam, that you were running a sales page, you were running traffic to a sales page and the sales page was converting positively. So for every, $60 you spent, you were getting a $100 sale. That is therefore, at this current point in time, a license to print money, right? Spend $60, get $100. Spend $60, get $100. You would borrow as much money as you possibly could to make that work until it stopped working, right? Because it's how you get a positive return on your money. It's fantastic. And I would say, well, that's great. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Then you have the argument which is, well, what about everybody who comes to the page and doesn't buy? What about if you're spending $1 a lead? What about the 59 people who aren't buying on that first visit? Wouldn't it make more sense to capture their information? And the answer, of course, is yes also. So yes, because those 59 names will probably be more valuable in the long term than that one buyer. Possibly. We would test it, right? Like all good marketers. Whether it's a high price ticket, a high ticket offer or a low price offer is, I believe, irrelevant, completely irrelevant, if the name is always going to be more valuable than the sale in the long term. And so I believe that our focus should definitely be on collecting names. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't run traffic directly to sales pages. I do. But as I mentioned earlier, that would be retargeted traffic or traffic that is somewhat familiar with me already.
Gotcha. Okay, so you've actually written a self-help book called How to Get a Grip. Did you ever picture yourself being a self-help author, Matthew?
Can you imagine? That was about 6 or 7 years ago. And here was the story. I was running a recruitment company. It was my first startup. And I had got about 2 years in and I realized I hated it. And I hated myself and I hated the person I'd become. And I loved the selling and my clients were okay. But I had a pretty toxic relationship with my business partner and equally my fault as his. We were an odd couple. And I felt incredible pressure to deliver results, which I wasn't really behind. And I thought I'd worked so hard up until now to create what I thought I wanted. And now I'm here and turning over millions and I've never been more miserable in my life. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And I prescribed myself some therapy, which was, I guess it would be journaling, which is, I needed to kick up the ass. I needed someone to tell me, what on earth have you possibly got to complain about, Kimberley? Get a grip. And so I started a blog called How to Get a Grip. And it was short rants, very sweary, very colorful language And this blog started to get some traction very, very quickly. It got featured on Lifehacker, I believe, and various others. And before I knew it, I was getting hundreds of thousands of hits on this blog where I was basically slapping myself in the face and saying, quit moaning, you take responsibility for yourself, take life less seriously, for God's sake, you're boring to be around. And I was putting this advice onto page 4 myself. It resonated really well with other people. And within a few weeks of the blog going live, I got contacted by a publishing house in the UK who said, we would like to turn this into a book. So it took me by surprise as much as anybody else, Adam. And I'm so very glad I wrote it. And if I look back on it, because I'm in a very, very different place mentally to where I was then, and because I've matured a little from the age of 28 to 36, 29 to 36, I wouldn't write that book today. And that would be a shame because it's a good book. I know this. I know that tens of thousands of people have bought it. Something like 30 or 40 or maybe more thousand people have bought it. And I still receive letters and tweets and emails today saying, thank you. It's exactly what I needed at this point in my life. And I get plenty of letters from people saying you're a douche as well. You think you've got all the answers, but you haven't, and you're just a dick. And I'm like, okay, I can live with that because people do still write to me today and say that's useful and that I'm proud of. Because the book is so broadly offensive. My dad had trouble ever telling his friends about it. My dad's a priest and he would have trouble. I said, Dad, I've written a book. He'd be like, yeah, well, very good, Matthew. I said, you can tell your friends. He said, no, I won't be telling them. I can't recommend it because the language is absolutely foul. But I'm happy that I wrote it because I know that it helped people. I know that for a fact because people write to me and tell me. And for me, that's good enough. As all marketers know, unfortunately, it doesn't have anything to do with what I teach today, which is persuasion. I teach persuasion, I teach sales improvement, I teach sales processes. So in principle, my next book should be about that in order to do what books are meant to do for businesses, which is drive leads. So this book occasionally drives leads, and they're really good leads because they're people who don't mind my potty mouth, amongst other things. But I've now stopped offering. I used to offer a free sample of that book when you joined my list. I stopped doing it because it was just way off. It's a different Matthew Kimberley from the one I was, but I'm very happy the book exists.
Me too, because I remember reading it when I was over in Bali. And as you say, the stories are a lot of colourful language, but laugh out loud stories. And I was sitting there laughing out loud. People were sort of looking across to see what was going on. And there I was just sat there reading your book on my Kindle and thoroughly enjoying myself. It was very entertaining. And not only that, like super helpful.
Well, thank you.
It's definitely worth getting if you're listening to the show, How to Get a Grip by Matthew Kimberley. Okay, so let's now talk about persuasion and some of I know there's many components to persuasion, but with a particular lens of marketing online, what are some of the more important things that listeners can be focusing on to really move the needle?
I think probably if we aim this towards the newcomer, if you like, the newcomer who's looking for the biggest rocks, I think confidence to be bold in your claims is probably one of the most important ones. As long as you can stand behind them, there's a difference between hyperbole and strength, right? If I visit somebody's page and they tell me that they are a success by accident, or they don't know why it works, but it seems to work, or even this kind of humble bragging that people do now, which I'm so incredibly grateful that the success of my clients reflects well on me. You see that on Facebook every now and again. I love my clients so much. It's a humble brag, but I think you really need to take ownership for the results that you're delivering, whether that's weight loss or whether that's convenience or whether that's a memorable vacation experience, and let the reader or the prospect know that if they put their faith in you or when they put their faith in you, then you are the person who's able to deliver on that. Okay, I think that's very important. I think you need to take ownership for the results. And it's a fine balancing act between coming across as a hyperbolic, arrogant prick and being somebody who's supremely confident. One of Cialdini's most important lessons, and anyone who's a student of persuasion will be familiar with this book, of course, influenced by Robert Cialdini, is authority. And authority really is, for me, one of the most critical ones. When I'm teaching newbie salespeople or even old hand salespeople, because persuasion on the web and persuasion in person is the same. The principles are exactly the same. It's just the way the message is delivered. It's that you must stop putting your prospect on a pedestal when you're in front of them or when they're visiting your page. The prospect is lucky to have found you. And the prospect is willing to be led by you, and we will cede to that authority. If you say, follow me and I'll take you on an interesting and productive journey, then we'll be more inclined to do that and saying, hey, why don't you jump over here and see if you like it? So there's a big important thing there. The other thing I think you can't get enough of is quantifiable, externally verifiable proof, right? So that could mean, for example, testimonials. It could mean case studies. It could mean expert endorsement. That is something that can't be argued with, right? So on my single malt mastermind sales page today, I think at least 60% of it now is taken up with testimonials from current customers, includes their picture, includes a live link to their website. I don't mind if people click off my sales page and go and look at what my clients are doing because they'll come back to me if they're ready, right? I think that's critical. I think too many marketers who are selling any kind of consultancy service or coaching service or service that involves delivery focus too much on what you get in terms of deliverables, right? So the package. And this is not new. This is sell the sizzle, not the sausage. I don't care if I get a sausage. I care how that sausage makes me feel. I care how that sausage makes me look. I care how that sausage makes me smell. I care on the results that that sausage will have in my love life. I care about the journey that I will be taking, the before and the after. This is your life today. This will be your life after the sausage. And if we take it to marketers who are running, let's say, group coaching or group teaching programs, they will often say, and you get 4 webinars a week, and you get 6 bonuses, and you get 3 private calls, and you get a private Facebook group. And this is a detail which is of some importance, but not nearly as much importance as what the results are going to be like when I have enrolled in your program or when I have taken your hot air balloon ride. If you're selling a hot air balloon, it's not take a hot air balloon ride, you'll go up to 20,000 feet or however high hot air balloons go, 10,000 feet. It is take your girlfriend on a hot air balloon ride and get laid tonight.
Different result versus what you get.
In basic terms, it's features versus benefits. I think many of us are focusing too much on the feature and not enough on the benefit, too much on the sausage and not enough on the sizzle.
Right. Because I think a lot of people sort of sell the information side of what they're selling as opposed to the transformation type of the journey you're going to take them on and the after versus the before.
Absolutely right. And if you look at my coach, Tucky Moore, he runs Black Belt, he runs $1 Million Coach Intensive, wrote a book called $1 Million Coach. He does do some traditional marketing as well, but some of his most effective marketing is sharing text messages from his clients on Facebook. So his clients write him a message, say, boom, I did 360,000 last month. And Tucky will share that. And all of a sudden, he'll get a dozen new applications to find out more about his program. And certainly when I joined the program, I didn't know what I got. I didn't care. I didn't care how many webinars I was going to get. I didn't care how many videos were in the video library. I didn't care about the live events. I just cared about the result. Can you make me that $1 million coach? And, the answer was compelling enough that I was happy to sign up blind without really knowing what I was going to get. And I think most of my buying decisions today are about that. And I think that's not atypical. Nobody signs up to a program because they get 6 webinars instead of 4, ever.
No, it just sounds overwhelming. The more content in there oftentimes.
Yeah. I mean, again, Tucky, I bow to the masters I learn from, uses the Sherpa analogy. You want someone to get you to the top of the mountain with as little baggage on your back as possible.
That's
right?
Great.
So the Sherpa is going to guide you up there. If he gives you, look, here's a ton of bonuses and themes and free events and tickets and partner invites that you can carry with you. You go, I don't know. But how about I'll carry everything for you and just push you up there?
That's a great analogy because people are offering so many what seem like superfluous bonuses just for the sake of stacking on the value that I'm curious as to whether that scares people off as much as it appeals to them. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I believe that you should offer. I believe you should always sweeten the deal, right? I call it the amenity kit approach. So if many people travel business class just because they feel special, right? Is it worth an extra $1,000? Unless you've got a flat bed, no, right? Or $2,000 to fly business class. But many people, let's say short haul flights business class. Is there a single good reason to fly short haul business class? No, none at all. You're going to be sitting in a plane for 3 or 4 hours, assuming that the flexibility of the ticket and the restrictions remain the same. The only reason to sit up front is for the amenity kit, which is a glass of wine, a little bag which includes a 3-cent toothpick and a free sample of eau de cologne. And and perhaps a piece of steak which is better than the sandwich you get down the back, but it's never worth the extra. So bonuses do work, right? There is, when you sweeten the deal, when you load the bonus, when you can increase the perceived value of the product, it will absolutely work. I think the mistake is worrying about the quantity of the deliverable rather than the result of the deliverable.
Gotcha. That makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, final area that I'd like to just sort of ask a couple of questions is your public speaking. Now, you are a particularly good one, although I've not seen you live. I've seen videos.
I was going to say, have you seen me speak? Okay, only on video.
Only online, yep.
I'd love to see you speak. I hear you speak fantastically.
Oh, you're very kind there, Matthew. But you're the master.
No, I'm deadly serious. People say great things about you, and I believe you've done more speaking this year than ever before, haven't you?
Well, 2017, so I haven't done any yet. But that's just a technicality.
In the last 12 months.
I'm being annoying. Yeah, it was about 25 or 26 last year. So that's about, I don't know how you feel, but that's about a good amount for me, because too much more you feel like you're on the road all the time and you might burn out.
Yeah. I love to speak. I do find it exhausting, which I think is how you should find it. When you step off, and irrespective of the travel you have to get there. And last year I spoke in Australia, the Philippines, all over the States. I spoke in Kenya, Tanzania, the UK. I picked up a lot of miles last year, and that's quite tiring. I love to travel. That's quite tiring in itself. But I also find if you can do a good job on stage, even if you've got a 20-minute mini keynote, then you should be thoroughly exhausted by the time you get off. And speakers often get a bad rap, and I'll let you ask your question in a second, but speakers, you often hear, well, a completely different person on stage to the one they are off stage. But that's okay. Yeah, for two reasons. One, when you're on stage, you're on, right? When you get off stage, you are exhausted. You're exhausted if you've done it properly, if you've given it your all. And even the best speakers in the world would say it takes everything out of you when you really give it. When you really do it, you should feel whacked. So I do feel sorry not sorry, but I feel that the people who give these 3-day, like the Tony Robbins of this world, the Suzanne Evans of this world, the people who give these 3-day seminars, which involve standing on stage and talking for 3 days solid, are something else.
It must be so draining. I mean, oftentimes when you're doing it right, even if it's a 1 or 2 day type of thing, it's quite energizing because you feed off the audience. But the drop or the collapse at the end must just be huge.
I felt it as well, as you probably have as well. But if you're doing a workshop, it can be the same. I saw Nicholas Kuzmich. I don't know if you know Nick. Facebook runs a pretty well-regarded Facebook agency. He has an event called the Art of Lead Generation or something like that. Art of the Lead Intensive or something like that. And I saw him at the end of day 2 in LA last time I was there, and he could barely move. I mean, he was comatose. I was like, Nick, what's wrong? He's like, I've just finished a 2-day workshop. And it really does, I think that's a good indication that you give a shit when you're exhausted when you get off stage.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, because it doesn't seem very difficult from people watching. It seems like you're having a good time, and you are, of course, but there's a whole lot of mental space that it occupies in the lead up to it, and obviously delivering it is quite exhausting, and then interacting with everybody afterwards is equally fun, but again, draining at the same time. So anyway, let me just circle back to the question. Which was
sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I thoroughly enjoy listening to all your stories about this. But what has been some of the best speaking advice you've received? Because aside from being an expert yourself, you've also worked very closely with Michael Port, who's been on the show before. Yeah, what's some of the best advice you've received?
Rehearse. You've got to know your material inside out. You've got to know your material without slides. Michael Port, who I worked with for 6 years when I was the head of Book Yourself Solid School of Coach Training, and later a partner in Book Yourself Solid Worldwide, is one of, if not the best teachers of public speaking in the world, him and Amy, his wife and business partner. And they taught me so much. I sat in on hours and hours, and I got direct coaching from them, and I sat in on hours and hours of watching them coach their clients through the heroic public speaking workshops that they did. And so I picked up enormous amounts. But the one thing that really sticks with me is if you're going to be doing keynotes rather than, standing up. If you're somebody who speaks regularly at meetings at work, for example, there would be a different set of skills I would advise. But if you're somebody who delivers the same keynote over and over again, which most professional speakers are, is you've got to know your material inside out. You have to know it inside out. You can recover from anything. but you can't recover from not knowing what you're meant to be saying. And rehearsal is often overlooked by people who consider themselves, I'd say not professional speakers, but people who consider themselves to be pretty good speakers. Yeah, I'll just get up there and wing it. And I've sat in audiences when people who consider themselves to be pretty good speakers stand up there and wing it. And then they boast about the fact that they're going to wing it before they get up there. And they boast about it when they get off. And it's execrable. You watch them and you say, what on earth? This is taking the piss. We are giving you our attention. We are giving you our time and energy. And in return, you think that you're the oracle of I don't know where, and we're going to be happy to listen to you spouting nonsense. No, I mean, it doesn't run like that. To tell a good story, to deliver a good presentation, it's like delivering a world-class Broadway performance, and you have to rehearse that stuff inside out. You should be able to do it with your eyes closed. You should be able to do it backwards. You should be able to do it blindfolded, and you should be able to pick up at absolutely any point in your speech. It's not just a question of knowing the linear direction of your performance, but you should be able to get sidetracked. You should be able to go, right, now run to 5 minutes before the end. Right, now run to 14 minutes after the start. Right, now run to the bit where you're sitting down. You should know this like the back of your hand if you expect your audience to reward you with the kind of attention, plaudits, rebookings, and leads that you believe you deserve.
Fantastic advice. And rehearsal isn't sexy, and it isn't what a lot of people think they need to do, but I totally agree. I've got a second part of that question. If you say, obviously before you're doing your first big speech or your second big speech, it's worth practicing, 5, 10, 20 times, 30 times? What would be your advice there?
Yeah, I mean, there's practice and there's practice, right? So rehearsal is slightly different to practice. Practice is, do you know the content? You might know the content very well because you've been teaching it for a long time. But then you've got rehearsal, which can actually help you understand, appreciate the material more and deliver it in a much better way. The best way to rehearse is in front of an audience, even if it's an audience of 2 people. The best way to rehearse is standing up on stage, not sitting down, running over the lines in your head, because things like blocking, use of stage, props, these things will come into play, and they will help as storytelling devices, and they will also help as aid memoirs for you. You can start to, if you know that, let's say you're teaching a story about an orange, an apple, and a banana, and the orange is always downstage left, the apple is always downstage center, and the banana is always downstage right. I don't even know if those are proper theatrical terms, but you know what I mean. You're standing at the front of the stage in one particular position. Every time you are wearing the banana hat, you're downstage right. Every time you're wearing the apple hat, you're downstage left, or whatever I said earlier. These things can help you, and they can help the audience understand what you're doing. So I think really you should be rehearsing as much as you possibly can. I mean, how many times is enough? Maybe you only need to do it 10 times before you feel I've nailed it. But I would be amazed if a Broadway actor said, I only need to rehearse 10 times before I nailed it. And they've got the lines written down for them, written by somebody else. So and they have a director. So I'd say you should be running through it once a day for a couple of months if you really, really, really want to kill it. And I'm not saying I've done that every time I've got up on stage with a new keynote. I'm saying that's what you should do.
Yeah, okay. That's an interesting distinction between practice and rehearsal that I hadn't quite appreciated. So say for a professional speaker or someone who's done that same keynote, does all the times you've done it previously, they count, I guess, as rehearsals? Or are you also suggesting that
they absolutely do count, for sure. I'm not. We're talking about a new keynote. We're talking about something that you haven't delivered before, and you use the feedback from that. I spoke to a guy, I'm trying to remember his name, somebody Aaron. Anyway, a pitchman, sales from the stage, and very, very well regarded. And I said, "How did you get your performance so polished?" He said, "It's easy. I've delivered it hundreds and hundreds of times." He said, "And every time I maybe try something new, I decide, did that add to the performance or the effectiveness of the performance, or did it detract? And if it added, I include it. And if it detracted, I never do it again." So every performance you give is a rehearsal, and you'll try things and they'll fall flat, or they won't fall as flat as you, or they won't be as good, they won't be as effective as you want. And so you can discard them. And I believe that, professional speakers speak, right? It's what they do. And it's like saying I'm going to be a professional athlete without going on the pitch and playing games. You can rehearse as much as you want, but it's when you're under the lights in front of an audience who are paying to be there that it really counts.
The high stakes environments.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that free consulting there, Matthew. That was super valuable. Let's just finish up now with how people can find out about your Persuasion program, how they can get on your mailing list and learn all the goodness that you've got to share.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak to you, Adam. It's always a pleasure. It's just a shame we're not face to face because you're so handsome.
Flattery gets you everywhere. You know this.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
I would love to get to know anybody who is a fan of you, Adam, because I know the stuff you do is incredibly high quality, and we've had the pleasure of eating together in the past, and no doubt we will do in the future as well. And for anybody who is a friend of Adam, you'll automatically be a friend of mine. And here's what I'd like you to do, please. Go to MatthewKimberley.com and find one of the boxes where you can submit your email address. If you put your email address in there, you'll receive my guide, which is 5 things that you should be doing every morning to make more sales in the next 60 days. And it gives you my 15 to 20 minute morning ritual with instructions on how you can do it yourself in order to grow revenue generating relationships pretty quickly. Then you'll be on my mailing list, and I would encourage you to drop me a line, please, and say, hey, I heard about you through Adam. And if you do want to find out more about my professional persuasion sales improvement program, then we can have that conversation by email. That would be the best thing to do.
That is a very wonderfully laid out, clear process for people to follow. And I'm on the list. It's good quality stuff. Funny. He's obviously got the British accent, and I like British humor personally, and I'm sure many of our listeners do. So look, jump on the list. It's totally worth your while. I love Matthew's sense of humor and all the information that he shares on persuasion, whether it's speaking or sales or whatever else. So Matthew, thank you for that. You have yourself a wonderful evening over on your side of the world, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
You're a gent. Thanks so much. See you soon, Adam.
So that is a wrap for my chat with MK, aka Matthew Kimberley. I love his no-nonsense approach to selling, particularly online, and his speaking tips are spot on. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And it's something that, unfortunately, not everybody does, but it means that if you do, there's a whole lot of easy improvements that you can make. Now, I had an interesting post-show chat with Matthew as well, and a lot of the sales messaging that we often struggle with when we're actually trying to sell our products can come down to basically, rather than focusing on what you get as the purchaser, focus on the results that they're going to experience. So think about where they are before your program and where you're going to get them to after your program, and focus on the results, not the fact that you've got 5 one-on-one phone calls or 25 modules of this and that. Focus on, you're here now, and I am going to get you there. It's referred to as the Sherpa method, as in you are the Sherpa and you're helping your client get to the top of the mountain with as little weight and baggage as possible. I like to explain to people that I'm going to cut out all the noise and distraction and just lay out step by step what people need to do to get to the result that they want, and give them permission to sort of not pay attention to anything else and literally just follow the steps as they're laid out. So if you want to find out more about Matthew, and I encourage you to do so because he is entertaining and valuable and funny, go to his website, as he mentioned on the show. Go to MatthewKimberley.com. On his homepage, you'll find the opt-in area to download his 5 Things Guide. The full name is 5 Things You Need to Do Every Morning to Get More Clients in 60 Days. Particularly good for you if you're a small business owner, sales manager, or BDM, Business Development Manager. If you work in the service industry and you speak English, it's going to help you get more client inquiries, earn more money, and sleep better at night. So head over to MatthewKimberley.com, pop in your email address, get the ebook, and when you get the email autoresponder, follow Matthew's instruction and actually write back to him and say, I heard you on Adam's podcast. Nice to meet you. So if you can do that, big thumbs up. You won't be disappointed with Matthew's work. It's one of the few newsletters I read whenever it comes in. It's always value add and puts a smile on my face each time I read it. Okay, so I hope you found that podcast useful and actionable. I certainly took a page of notes, much of which I am going to implement. So thank you, Matthew. If you're listening to the end, thanks very much. If you haven't got our marketing templates, head to bluewiremedia.com.au/book. And if you liked the show, I would love it if you took a minute or two now to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And until the next show, take care, have a good one, and I'll see you soon. Bye.